We're here for episode 3.
I know, getting this rolling.
Coach's Corner with Justin and Ethan. I am your host, Justin Schollard, with my other host,
Ethan Wolf.
our other host.
The other host, the co-host.
It's everyone's host, folks.
We're hanging out.
We're all here for you.
Yep.
So today we're going to dive into a topic that we've all heard, the statistic that 90% of people regain their weight. It's a very broad number that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So I think today we're going to lay the foundation of why this happens, what it actually means statistically,
Yeah.
address some of what we found in our own research for this episode of what it takes to be part of the 10% that do keep it off.
Yep.
And what they have in common, and then just hopefully give some helpful tips.
Yeah. Good.
And just get the right mindset going into this stuff, because I think there's just such a stigma around it where if you don't have the 100-pound transformation, that your weight loss isn't valid, right?
Even a 30-pound, 20-pound.
Yeah, and
I think that's also a scary statistic, right? It's like,
it can feel like a huge mountain to climb.
yeah, if you know that 90% of the people gain the weight back in 3 to 5 years, fuck it.
Can feel very bleak, and what's the point of
Yeah.
even trying? So not only do I have to spend the next 6 months like feeling starving and restricting my food and undergoing intense brutal exercise, then the likelihood of me even keeping the weight off, whatever I managed to eke out over that 6-month period, statistically I'm probably going to gain it all back anyways. It can lead someone to not even want to take action in the first place.
That's a mental projection that just is so daunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just start with some statistics, okay? So we know that 90% of people, according to a University of Michigan study from 2017, gained all of their weight back over a 5-year period,
Yeah.
okay? So they had a couple of case studies in this article, and one of them was someone who lost like 65 pounds. But the common narrative, the common sort of thread with all the examples is that the cravings for food, the urge, the hunger just kept growing more and more the more weight you lost, which is really interesting. I don't think we realize that.
Yeah.
That we've always thought of body fat as this inert matter in our body.
It's just energy storage.
It's just storage.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's not. In fact, it's actually communicating with your brain
Yeah.
and with your stomach and with your nervous system and influencing hunger signals that get stronger and stronger the more weight you lose, especially if you've been what we would consider obese for a long time.
Yeah, endocrine system's happening, the hunger hormones, all that stuff, right? It's not just like a little pocket of energy just waiting to be used. It's participation through either storage or being taken away, cascades out.
So it can feel like you're really climbing an uphill battle here. I think that one of the statistics that I read was, I think it was from the National Library of Medicine or something like that, that for every kilo of body fat you lose,
We're at 2+ pounds.
it decreases your base metabolic rate, which for those who don't know is the amount of calories your body burns at rest. So every kilo you lose, it decreases your base metabolic rate by 20 calories.
Okay.
But it increases your hunger signal by 100 calories.
Wow.
So your metabolism is dropping. So your body's ability to burn calories is decreasing, which is normal. When anyone loses weight, their metabolism is going to lower. But the rate at which it's decreasing is being 3x'd by the amount of food that your body is trying to get you to
Right,
eat more.
the hunger hormones are flowing. I think that just points out to how much we're hardwired for survival.
Yeah.
And that survival in the past of finding more food and foraging and hunting, it doesn't really apply now, but we don't want to die. And when your body is letting go of fat, it's just thinking we're not eating enough. We're fundamentally in this deficit, so we're going to ramp up hunger to really motivate behavior or determine behavior to find more food. And it's just really interesting because that survival mechanism is what hurts us now because we live in such an abundant society in terms of like food and that kind of a thing. And it's just a really interesting statistic, because I think it just shows how much like our hard wiring is like just fighting us in our current situation. I think it was also like we were talking about that when you gain weight, let's say you gain 50 pounds and you have 50 pounds of excess body fat, your body just considers that your new normal. Mm-hmm. It doesn't consider that like you have 50 extra pounds of like surplus energy just waiting to be used in case
so we can go ahead and relax now.
Yeah, like, oh, it's like a tough
eat.
winter, no big deal. It's just like, no, this is your new normal. And so even though you might be in excess of 50 pounds, losing 4 pounds, 5 pounds still has that effect of more and more hunger.
We got to refill the coffers.
Even though you're still overweight or obese, so to speak. And it's just, again, that same situation where your body's like, okay, cool, this is our new normal. Doesn't matter if we have this many calories ready to in reserve to burn. We don't want to lose it. We don't want to let it go, because that might mean we die fundamentally.
And that's just where there's instinctual pull of survival mode.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is every mammal on the planet, or probably animal for that matter, is constantly seeking energy and survival and food. Totally. And then despite how abundant food may be, there's still this just pull for more.
So let me ask you, so what do you think are the primary reasons that people gain the weight back?
Gain the weight back.
Yeah, obviously we're talking about some physiology, and we can talk more about that, but what is it? Like, what's your opinion, or like how would you put it in a nutshell?
In my experience, truth be told, my personal issue has always been the opposite. I've always wanted to put on size. However, it just so happens that I own a company that we've worked with thousands of people in weight loss, and so I've become a expert in this topic, not from personal, like firsthand experience, but from literally years and thousands of case studies and just people that we've worked with for this very thing. And so here's what I observed in my clients. There's a few things that happen, right? What do we know? That most diets work right away. And so you'll see an immediate drop in weight that tends to plateau around month 3 or 4, and then by month 6 or 7, we're starting to regain again. Most diets typically work. Now, the problem is that when you take a person who is on some degree of the spectrum, has their lifestyle on autopilot, they have their weekends, they have their social life, they do this for lunch, they do this for breakfast, they watch this TV show, and then you do a 180-degree shift into what people would consider like extreme or just like rigorous or just hard, strict dieting, or maybe like cut out carbohydrates, like boom, and you just sever this lifestyle momentum you've had for so long, and then all of a sudden you're doing a boot camp 4 days a week or 5 days a week, because you're constantly just sore, and you're eating less food, and you're just running such a trough, such a deficit in energy that willpower is there for a while, and then all of a sudden it's like we're like walking on thin ice, and the smallest thing that in our life, we get sick or we have a hard day at work, and we just say fuck it, because it's like just too much to bear. And then that fundamentally just isn't, basically what I'm trying to say is that it's just not sustainable. Like the path they chose to try to lose weight in the beginning just isn't sustainable. And so then they stop the diet, and then they go back to the old ways, or quote unquote normal, and then eventually just gain all the weight back. So I think that's number one reason. Number two,
unsustainable pathway.
Unsustainable. Okay. It's not just like I'm going to take my entire lifestyle as an aggregate and just decrease it by 10%. So it's all very familiar, just a little bit less.
Yeah.
But it's no, I'm going to take my current lifestyle, I'm going to pull the emergency brake up, switch 180 degrees in a different direction, all of a sudden try to live someone else's lifestyle where I'm like eating 1,500 calories a day and doing 5 boot camp classes. That's not where we're at right now. We got to meet you where you're at.
You've lived your life.
That's not realistic, and therefore you're going to be able to get through it for a month or two, and then it's going to collapse. So that's the biggest one. Then number 2, I think, is just not getting results fast enough. So maybe you do a more sensible approach. And maybe it's, hey, we're not going to try to do this 180-degree shift. We're just going to slow things down a little bit and take your existing meals, and we're just going to shrink things down. We just try to slowly move you and shift direction, but then you don't see results fast enough. 2 weeks have gone by, I've only lost a pound, right? Or 2 pounds. Ugh, it's not working, forget it. Or maybe it is working and maybe you are burning body fat, but maybe if you're a woman, maybe it's that time of the month, maybe you go and you have a salty meal and there's 3 or 4 pounds of water weight that just jump on the scale, but behind the scenes, you are burning fat. It's just being temporarily masked by water weight retention from a meal you ate or from whatever, and you think that it's not working, or you lose a few pounds and then you go out to dinner and you gain 3 pounds back and you think that diet's not working and so you quit.
Okay, so not fast enough rewards.
So instant gratification or just not seeing results fast enough and thinking it's not working even though it really is, and if you just stuck with it, probably is the more sustainable path, or just way too aggressive pivot in your normal life that's just fundamentally not sustainable and never was, and it was just doomed to fail from the beginning. So those are the big ones for me. That was a long rant, but I feel deeply about this, damn it.
You know, you do it day in and day out. That's what it is.
How does that align with what
I think it's hitting the nail on the head, and absolutely agree. And I think for me, it's pretty much fundamentally that people are engaging in behaviors that are leading to the outcome that they're at, meaning the lifestyle that they're living has led them to gain weight from eating too much, not incorporating physical activity, and whatever it is. And then I think that on top of that, there is the lack of understanding of the mental switch, right? Similar to this all or none where people pull the handbrake and do the 180. But I think it's when this idea that we all say lifestyle, and we all understand this idea that it's a lifestyle. It's what I do day in and day out. But the fundamental truth is that your behaviors are going to have to change, and in some way, those behaviors are going to have to change long term. They're going to have to be different forever, because fundamentally, the way you've been living is what produced the current results.
Right.
And even if, to your point, you're just polishing the edges and taking off some rough edges, you gotta do changes forever, because if you don't, you just return to what it was before. Hence, it being a lifestyle, like the rest of your life.
There's no going back.
There's no going back.
Because what does back look like?
The back is just the thing that led to in the first place. So I think there's this thing of it's about an inability to adhere to long-term behavior change, which we'll talk about later about habits and things. But fundamentally, I think it also comes to an understanding that you can't go back. You just can't go back. And so that is the biggest thing. And one of the things I'll talk about there is this idea that our American culture fundamentally doesn't serve being healthy.
No.
We're extremely sedentary. There's just really poor food choices everywhere that are glorified and advertised and just very accessible. And so if you're not making conscious decisions to be physically active and move more and eat properly or healthily or in some type of balanced way, you're fundamentally going to fall down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, we don't live in a culture where you have to move in order to do anything.
You're not walking around. You have
literally,
no labor.
I could spend my entire day right there.
Sitting. You
and
get car, desk, bed, couch, right?
If I really wanted to, I could probably just text Tanya and have her bring me some food, and I'd never have to leave that spot.
In most urban areas, you can get your groceries delivered now. So I think this mentality that the status quo of American culture doesn't serve being happy and healthy. And if you just do the status quo, you're probably going to end up in a place that it doesn't feel good. There's a very high chance of it. And so it's this idea that you have to choose and engage behaviors that aren't the ones that got you there.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to do them long term or forever. Yeah. And it's not a temporary thing. You can't just toggle it on and off, so to speak, or you're going to forever go and that kind of thing.
And so therefore, it's so important that we ease into these behavioral shifts over a long, stretch out the horizon, stretch out the timeline. It doesn't need to be in 3 months. It doesn't need to be in 6 months. It doesn't even need to be this year. And in fact, a theory that I had when we were preparing for this episode is, okay, what do we know? That people can typically get results and then they plateau around month 6, and then by the end of the first year, they're gaining their weight back, and then by the end of the year 2 or 3, it's pretty much all over. So that's the sort of lose, regain trajectory. So what if then we flipped it around where we don't even hit the end result until that year 2? So let's say you need to lose 50 pounds. So instead of trying to do that in 6 months, which you can lose 50 pounds in 6 months, and by all intents and purposes, that would be considered like a decent weight loss
That's
trajectory.
solid. That's great.
However, we also know that in 2 or 3 years, you have a 10% chance of keeping that weight loss off. But what if we slowed it down to the point to where you don't even hit that 50 pounds until that 2-year mark? Yeah. So now where everyone else is bottomed out, got their Instagram reel, highlight reel going, and all the before and afters, but then unfortunately 2 years later they've regained it. What if we just stretched it out to where it's so subtle that the lifestyle shifts you're making on a day-to-day basis are so subtle that it doesn't feel invasive. It doesn't disrupt your flow too much, and it allows you such a runway to acclimate to these new behavior shifts that when you actually arrive at this destination, which isn't sexy to say I lost it in 2 years, but you've done it and it's so sustainable that when you hit that point, you're like, this is just who I am now.
It's the new you. That is the thing. And I think it goes back to what we're talking about, is that these behaviors can't go away. They're going to be forever. And I think that is the challenge, is that it's like becoming a new person isn't easy, whether it's in relationships or how you work or save money. These are all things that can be challenging to modify because we're already wired in, and there's some physiology in there and that kind of a thing. And I think it's the truth. It's like we talked about in our New Year's resolution of, if there's a gradual way up the mountain, it's going to be that much easier than having to climb like straight up. We're going to circle around this idea of like, we just have to change behavior.
Yeah.
It's just, that's the only way. It's long-term behavior change. There's genetics, there's this, there's that, but fundamentally you have to be a different person at the end of the game.
And that's where the rubber meets the road. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's all this theory. Great. Now we go to apply it. And that's where you see resistance, because let's be honest, there's habits which are what they are. Like, they can be good and they can be bad.
Yeah.
So we can have good habits, we can have bad habits. And when you have someone who is well into adulthood, and we've got decades and decades of habits established,
habitual behavior,
which basically turns into conditioned responses.
Yeah, that's what they are. Yep.
Yeah. It's very hard as life gets busier and as the just momentum of adulting gets, the velocity of adulting gets so fast, to pause, insert a little awareness,
like insert a wedge, right?
And then choose a different option. It's very difficult. And that's why I think, like, sometimes if we can look at it, if we can just accept that it's going to be difficult, and we cannot expect this to be easy, and we can just understand that there's nothing fundamentally wrong with you if you don't want to work out or eat less food. That's normal.
Change is hard, right?
Yes.
We are hardwired to avoid change. The unknown is just not our friend in a lot of ways. There's that saying, we often choose a familiar hell versus an unfamiliar heaven. Yeah, and so even if we absolutely know for a fact that something is better for us, it's still difficult to choose it. And I think a lot of it is part of this wiring. And so, like, habits, I'm going to use the word habits a fair amount, but habits are a response to an external stimulus. And the thing about habits is that response is wired to the basal ganglia of our brain, which is just about the reward system. It's an old school survival, just, is this pleasurable, is this reward? And that generally is related to comfort and calories, for example. It's a rewarding experience to eat. It's a rewarding experience to be comfortable. But decision-making comes from our prefrontal cortex. It's a different part of the brain. So the idea is that we develop these responses to external stimulus because they create some type of reward, but they're not related to our conscious thinking. And so to fight that, even though we might have a conscious thought of, oh, it would be better for me to eat differently or to exercise more or XYZ, we might have a particular habit that's already hardwired that is related to this reward system. And so we really got to get in there and interject a new reward system. We got to find a way to create a new pathway that still signals that habitual kind of thing.
positive, negative feedback loops.
Yep.
And so it's like we got a stimulus,
Yeah.
which could be hunger, could be a hard day at work,
Stress. Yeah. Smell of
depression,
the smell of something,
smell,
the sight of
right?
something.
Maybe you're on Instagram, you see your ex's post with their new boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah,
Stimulus, object, whatever,
Anything,
non-biased,
any sense,
stimulus.
yeah, just comes in.
And then there's this conditioned response. And the
Yep.
thing is that most of us tend to cope with food, alcohol, both, right?
Yeah,
All of us.
all the things,
Yep.
right? It's like a good example. You get an email, you get a bunch of emails, all work related. You feel overwhelmed. You feel stressed. You want to escape that feeling of stress.
Mm-hmm.
You bite your nails. The action provides a relief, and you get a dopamine response, a reward mechanism, because you've relieved the stress of the emails.
Yeah.
You're overloaded with work or your relationship stressing you out, and you want to get away. You start scrolling on your phone. You get to escape, get a reward mechanism. And so you fundamentally, your brain just sees it that, oh, there's something happening that's either stressful or I want that. You walk by a donut shop and you smell the donuts and they smell good. So you go and you get a donut and your brain says, yeah, here's some dopamine and here's some reward chemicals. And so those are the conditioned responses that you might not even realize you do it. You might not even realize you're biting your nails. You might not even realize you're anxious at night before you go to bed and you can't sleep, and so you're going into the fridge, right? You might be, obviously you're aware of it, but
Yeah, I can't sleep on an empty stomach. That's like a conditioned response,
Yeah,
right? And then,
you're just-
okay. And the reason I think, to expand on what you're saying, the reason it's a negative feedback loop, because you might be thinking, well, how is that negative or positive? What is the difference? Is the outcome of those actions.
yes,
And that's what makes it a negative or a positive. And so if it's like stimulus, stress, response, eat, outcome, weight gain, that's this negative feedback loop.
yeah, I'm trying to lose weight.
And the more we reinforce these feedback loops, the more it becomes like our dominant operating system.
The automatic response to
Automatic
stimulus.
response.
I feel stressed, I eat.
Yeah.
I feel hungry, I eat.
And then like the layers of self and conditioned responses are so intertwined that we start to just think that's who we are.
Yeah.
Where
100%.
a positive feedback loop is the opposite. It's stimulus. I just got a really brutal email. Pause. Okay, this is where I would typically want to start drinking alcohol. This is typically where I'd want to start,
Scrolling on my phone,
or
ignore
raid
it,
the pantry, or
bite my nails.
or
Do
whatever
whatever it might be.
Instead, I'm going to go for a walk.
Yeah.
So it's a pattern interrupt.
Yeah, this is that moment where you
Yep.
got to put the wedges and choose
Instead,
something different.
I'm going to just do 50 squats just to focus my brain on that instead
Yeah.
of the alternative. And then the outcome now is positive.
Yeah.
You got your step goal in. You did your leg workout. You ate something healthy.
Yeah.
And then the idea is that, listen, we may never eradicate these negative feedback loops because it is in our operating
Avoiding
system.
discomfort is how we survived.
But the idea is the more we do this, the more we create awareness, change the response to a conscious one instead of an unconscious one, and therefore the outcome now is positive.
Yeah.
The more we stack these positive feedback loops, they start to disproportionately outweigh the negative ones.
Yeah.
The negative ones will still be there. They're like little shadow selves.
Yeah, they're
But we can fundamentally start to rewrite our operating system now, and then over time, slowly, it becomes the new normal.
Yeah.
And we have a really good mechanism and system now to manage our own stress responses.
right.
But it takes time. And
It takes time.
effort. And you got to want it.
And the thing I think it's important just to remember, to your point of not wanting to exercise, or why don't I not want to, it's because this is literally a survival mechanism, right? Like, this is hardwired from a long time ago, where avoiding discomfort and being rewarded for avoiding discomfort, however it comes, was a reward, right? But we don't live in a culture and a society where we have to make sure we're warm, or we have a lack of food. Like, those basic reward mechanisms don't serve us in the same way because we just live in a different age. And I found this little kind of quote that I thought really was like a nice way to have an understanding of that, because it brought in all these different things. And it says basically, just because something feels good in the moment, that doesn't mean it's good for our long-term happiness, health, longevity, social relationships, or mental wellness. And I like this one, is just because something is uncomfortable doesn't mean it's dangerous. Because I think in the past, something uncomfortable might mean dangerous. To be hungry might mean you could die. To be cold might mean you could die. But now we have societal introductions of discomfort, that email from your boss, the fight with your partner, whatever, the traffic on the way to working out. So it's just, I think it's to remember that we're really fighting our hardwired physiology because of just the way things are.
And in fact, it's those things are the very things that actually build character and self-control and self-mastery, really, right?
Yeah.
It's like, can you be comfortable being uncomfortable? I know it's super cliche, but it's true.
But it's really,
and one thing that I speak to a lot and often in the group is, let's not look at this as a habit. Let's maybe, what if we reframed it and looked at the things that we have to do as a ritual? Because a habit can be anything. It can be good or it can be bad. Like smoking is a habit, right? Gambling is a habit. Overeating can be a habit. But a ritual is a little bit more unique. A ritual almost implies a short-term sacrifice for a long-term payoff. So it imbues delayed gratification in it. And so if like we can just accept that I don't want to work out. Yeah, working out's hard. Nobody wants to work out.
Yeah, it's just,
every time I'm about to go work out, there's that voice in my head, just like you have it too, convincing me, tricking me, luring me into maybe why today I should just rest, or you're sore, you're too tired, or you worked hard today, you didn't sleep well last night. All the reasons. I hear it too. Yeah. But it's if we ritualize something, I expect not to want to do this. I don't want to wake up at 5 and go chant outside.
But I didn't even eat. I have overnight oats. I just not been feeling them lately. It's what I programmed to eat, but I just don't want to eat them. I'm just not. They're not appetizing. Not going to taste bad, but like I automatically start to revert. Oh, what do I want to eat? What would be satisfying to just like my cravings? And it's like I want to eat them anyway.
That's a good point you bring up, and I think that plays a lot into this topic. It's like a lot of people say, I just get bored with the routine, the diet, the workouts. And I think that, listen, variety is the spice of life. We all want variety, yet it's like sometimes the variety can be the trick, can be the tripwire.
The thing that just, and here's the thing is I am at a place now where I'm like, I'm going to choose something else to eat because I'm being so avoidant. But I'm going to choose it consciously and still do my macros. But it's also the point of like, you let that new stimulus in and it's, oh shit. Well, maybe I can, what if I just put a little cheese on it? Actually, you know what? That bagel shop down the place has a very similar food item. Right. You know, it's like they sometimes say with addicts, like you can't do a little bit because it just opens the floodgates. You justify
a little bit, but that's just a tripwire for opening the floodgates.
Yeah, it just could lead to some people have the discipline and some people don't.
But I think that, so we know that objectively it's difficult. We know that people get bored. I think that like going into how do you then structure your life so that we can avoid these pitfalls. And this is where brass tacks, where the rubber meets the road. Like how do you actually do this now to not be in the 90%, but be in that 10% that can maintain it? I think that what we know is that the slower you lose the weight, the more likely you are to keep it off. So that's just a blanket sort of rule of thumb that I think anyone can apply. So don't rush the quick fixes. Don't rush the Instagram 50 pounds in 4 month kind of weight loss things. But looking at this as, hey, this is a lifestyle. Like you were saying earlier, this isn't just a 12-week thing and then I get to go back to eating normal. There's no going back. So when you do choose something, make sure that it's somewhat in alignment with, or at least reflects your current lifestyle. So it's not such a hard pivot and a hard shift. And then back of your mind, it's not really going to last that long anyways.
Yeah.
But then also like, you got to take ownership over this. Okay. So like you just said with overnight oats, I prepared that, but then I don't want to eat it because I've already had it a few days in a row and whatever, I'm getting bored. That's super normal. But the difference is that you also know that those overnight oats are roughly maybe 250 calories and there's 10 grams of protein. So I'll just swap it out for something comparable.
The next time I prepare my food, still doing my meal prep, still putting it in my macros, but that's for me, it's an awareness of, I'm aware that I'm now fighting uphill the battle so much. So I'm like, let me modify it in a way that's going to work, but there's still discipline involved and I'm still choosing and making sure that the thing I'm swapping it out, it's going to just be one of the other 3 things I eat for that kind of meal on a consistent basis. I'll just go get a bagel now or whatever it is, but it's okay. Here's this other, I'm going to probably start to go into a hot breakfast or a hot carb heavy item because that's how I'm looking at it. But
And make a repertoire. There's so many resources. Create like a breakfast, lunch, and dinner repertoire. What are like the 12 breakfast, lunch, and dinners that are all give or take the same calorie count that you can just like quickly rotate through to keep it fresh and fun, but yet it's not random in the sense that you're not in control of it. It's intentional variety, not random. Like variety doesn't mean random. Random
for sure.
can be like variety can be intentional.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's one of those things I wanted to say before, but when you were talking about like a ritual and that kind of thing, it's one of the things I've heard from you a lot, which I use with my clientele, which is the notion of discipline. And discipline is choosing what you want now or choosing what you want most versus what you want now. And it goes into this instant gratification versus this long-term thing. And I think that is we're going to need discipline. The motivation will run out. We're going to need to make decisions that are difficult.
By the way, motivation's for amateurs.
Yeah. And I think that's where like the power of why comes in. We have to, why the ritual idea of this is still hard, I'm choosing it anyway. There's this end game. And I think in terms of talking about how can we make changes that stick, what are the ways to do it? And I think having the why and the idea of a why is important. And that means you're gonna have to sit down and think about, well, why am I making these changes? Is it because I don't like the way I look? Is it because I want to attract a partner? We're talking about fat loss here. Is it because I just got diagnosed with diabetes? Is it because heart failure, heart disease, and heart attack runs in my family and my risk is this much higher?
Maybe you got kids and you want to be a good role model for your kids.
Totally. Having something that you anchor to as to why you're choosing to make these hard decisions, that can be this rock, this anchor, so that when you don't want to go to the gym or you don't want to eat the overnight oats, you can be like, oh yes, let me remind myself why I've chosen
what I want now
to make the overnights.
What I want now might be to throw the overnight oats in the garbage and go through the drive-through at Starbucks.
Yeah,
but what I want most
is to be healthy for my kids.
Be healthy for my kids and and lead by example for my family.
So that's, I think, a good core of it, because we're going to have to fight the good fight. There's no way around it, right? We can't magically just think we're going to want to do all these difficult things. And so I think that's one, just as like a core root. But then in terms of what you were saying of making it incremental, attaching it to your current lifestyle, right? If we already have a habit formed, we already have an automatic response to an external stimulus built into our daily life, piggybacking a new behavior onto that is going to be a really easy way to engage the new habit, right? If stepping on the scale every morning is something we ask our clients to do and they always brush their teeth, we can say, hey, right before you brush your teeth, just step on the scale, right? Let's attach that new behavior to this old behavior.
To an existing one.
Right? So another example I'll give is that walking is a fundamental, easy, accessible way to get more physical activity and be more healthy and all the good things. Generally, people have a lunch break at work. Let's just take the average Joe with the 9 to 5. Hopefully, they're getting a lunch break. If it's an hour, they can start maybe tack on 20 minutes of a walk at the end of their lunch break. The lunch break already exists.
You don't need to eat for an hour.
Yeah, you don't need to eat an hour.
No one's eating
right.
for an hour.
You can mess around on your phone and do whatever, but you could even catch up on emails, and I understand that might be an appealing idea, but fundamentally, you already have the lunch break. It's built into your day. You don't have to make more time. And so attaching that 20-minute walk to your lunch break is another way to piggyback a pre-existing situation and lessening that barrier of entry for a new behavior, which we already know is going to be difficult.
Yep. I was just going to say, it's lower the barrier of entry. So often people think that, okay, the mountain I have to climb is fucking tall. I got to lose 80 pounds. That's like trying to climb Everest. But so then they've created the barrier of entry of what that's going to take. I got to work out 5 days a week. I got to eat. I got to track every macro. And it's just like, forget it. There's no time for that. But what if it was as simple as like, you got your hour-long lunch break and you eat for 30 minutes and you walk for 30 minutes?
Yeah.
What if it's as simple as placing your morning routine of your hair products and your toothbrush right above your scale so you can't not see that scale? Because if you don't... You got to know your numbers if you want to improve your numbers. Yeah. If you're not tracking your numbers, it's going to be very difficult. But basically, bolting on the new habits that you want for your life to the existing ones that you've already got. And you already got this machine in motion, bolt on small little incremental habits. And I know that you guys are probably all rolling your eyes like, yeah, what do you, yeah, like I'm going to lose 80 pounds by just walking 30 minutes. You know what?
Yeah.
Maybe. And speaking about positive feedback loops, that might just be the little tiny spark that you need to just prove to yourself that you can do something. And that little 20-minute walk at your lunch break that might result to, wow, a week later I lost a pound. Interesting. Well, what else can I do? What if I were to add more protein in to my diet so I'm more satisfied? And just little tiny incremental steps. Like I'm telling you, I've seen this happen. I know what the other side looks like. You will look back, you will lift your head in 6 to 12 months from now, and that could be massive trajectory change of your lifestyle by making those tiny itty bitty decisions now.
Totally. And so I think you just hit on a key component of it might be the thing that motivates you or sparks you, right? So changing habits takes reflection. So basically, like cognitive behavioral therapy, like a big pillar of it is reflection and just paying attention to how you feel. So the whole idea is you try something new and you take the time to reflect and see how you feel afterwards. And that second part, they say, is like a hack for changing your behavior. Because by paying attention to actually how you feel, it creates this whole cascade. So if you go for the walk and you don't take that moment to say, oh, like I have a little more energy, I feel proud of myself, I feel like I'm moving towards my goals. Oh, okay, cool. Like these are all these positive reinforcements. And that could be the thing of, oh, okay, like maybe I want to show up better in this other place because I've had my why. And so I think there's that important part that like taking the time to reflect on the fact that you just did something at all is going to be a potential spark that lights a whole fire for you to do something small over here. And if you take the time to reflect on that, a little something small over here, and take the time to do something with that, and next thing you're working from all these edges, that's going to create actual change. And then that's just going to become a positive feedback loop where now you're doing all these behaviors because you're actually like, oh, like this feels good.
Which feeds into this slow, gradual progression of easing into this new lifestyle, right? As opposed to, let's say there's 50 things that need to change. There's 50 units of change that need to happen.
Yeah.
The reason why people fail and the reason why statistically it's grim is usually everybody wants to just knock out all 50 at one swing. Very difficult. I can't even imagine. Versus every week we do one. And each one of those is virtually marginal and inconsequential to the bigger picture. But by the time you get to week 30, the majority of your lifestyle now has subtly shifted.
That's the thing. And
then within a year's time now, you've basically rewritten your operating system now.
Yeah.
And it's in a way that you gave yourself time to acclimate and adapt, and you grew into this, and it's who you are now. There's an identity around this.
I think it reminds me like when you get getting older, as somebody who's a year away from 40, we all, I think if we have had any type of time pass, we're not in our 20s anyway, that we suddenly look in the mirror and we're like, oh, wow, look at that. We have incrementally changed, and you don't necessarily note it on the day-to-day. You don't.
Right.
It's not like all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I'm middle-aged. Okay, cool, right? And I think it's like that same idea where that if you trickle these things in little by little, next thing you know, you look in the mirror and you're like, oh, shit.
Wow.
I exercise all the time.
I look like a guy who exercises.
I pay attention to what I eat. I'm not overweight, right? You're that person all of a sudden, and it's, oh, okay, like here I am.
So I think that the takeaway here is forces are working against you. You have to just accept that. Accept this is not going to be easy. Accept that there's external, societal, relational forces where people might be shitty and challenge your decision, challenge your resolve. And then there's also culture, real biological forces that, like, when you start to lose weight, your body's going to send you crazy hunger signals to eat more food. There's a lot of things that you have to overcome. Yeah. But it doesn't need to be the 100-pound crazy reality show thing. Even 20 or 30 pounds could mean the
Huge.
difference between lower cholesterol, higher VO2 max, longer life expectancy, lower blood pressure. Like,
Yeah.
10% body weight reduction could be massive in a person's long-term trajectory. So even if you don't get the 100 pounds, but we can just get 20 or 30 off, that is huge. And if that's sustainable and you feel better and you're moving better and you're more confident,
It's a huge win. It's to your point, those kind of changes can change so much for metabolic disease and all that kind of things. It's like, I think it's just to make the battle easier, it's aim small. Start with small stuff. Get rid of the all or none mentality,
definitely.
right?
Yeah.
Tackle behaviors onto old behaviors or replace habits with new habits, right? Take time to reflect on the new things you're choosing to do and just give yourself a little grace, because it's never going to be perfect. And it goes back into progress, not perfection. Just let yourself do your best to make those decisions day in and day out. And don't let a hiccup, which is inevitably going to happen for some reason, take down the house of cards.
Yeah, no one week defines you. No one day defines you. It is the long game for sure. And just accept that it's going to suck. Just accept that, like, you're not going to want to work out. I don't want to work out today. I'm going to do it. But I don't want to. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you for not wanting to move. There's nothing wrong with you for not wanting to eat better. It's human nature. It's just you are not that emotion. You are the one witnessing that emotion. And as long as we can detach ourselves from that and understand that and not mingle up our identity with these feelings and impulses and just start to create some separation and see them for what they are and create awareness and choose differently in order to reinforce those positive feedback loops, it's a slow process, but eventually that's what's going to lead us to these behavioral shifts over time.
Remember, our brain wants immediate rewards, but they're not going to come. But as someone who lives it, there are palpable benefits to exercising regularly and eating. So I just want to say, you got this. You can do it. Give yourself a chance.
Yeah. So cool. So there you guys go. Hope that was helpful for some of you.
Just learn something.
Man, researching this topic was really enlightening, and I really learned a lot of cool stuff and just gave me a lot of just insight into what's happening here and what the real issues are, and just like reinforcing that belief that it just needs to be a slow, gradual thing. And the faster you try to make it happen, the more likely you are that it's not. Yeah. It's going to backfire. So, all right.
Episode 3.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. See y'all next time. Peace.
Ho.